sons and daughters, colleagues, veterans will all have a part to play, and more families will know what sacrifice for our nation means.
Britain is on edge. In the span of 72 hours, 3 large-scale national security alerts triggered panic, confusion, and a very visible ramp-up in emergency response. For a country that prides itself on stoicism and stability, this wasn't business as usual. It was a signal, one that made it painfully clear. Something bigger is happening, and the public is only starting to grasp the scope. Behind closed doors, defense officials are calling it what it is, a turning point. Britain isn't just preparing for conventional war, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. It's being tested in a far more subtle, dangerous way, through cyber attacks, through psychological pressure, through something called hybrid warfare, the art of weakening a society from within without ever firing a bullet. This isn't a war with explosions on the ground. It's a slow, creeping assault on trust, infrastructure, and public unity. And here's where it gets worse. It's working. One of the most significant breaches in recent memory just hit British government systems. Highly sensitive data, including criminal records, was compromised. It wasn't just a technical failure. It was a blow to national confidence. If the systems responsible for public protection can't even protect their own data, what are citizens supposed to trust? This isn't paranoia. Intelligence reports have confirmed a 47% increase in cyber threats tied to hostile state actors. These aren't just random hackers. These are targeted attacks focused on the UK's softest points: hospitals, power grids, emergency systems. The very infrastructure civilians depend on every single day. And here's what those simulations show. If a coordinated cyber attack hits hard enough and for long enough, the country could face a domino effect. Critical systems shut down, millions affected, and deaths not from violence, but from failure. No power, no access, no coordination, just collapse. But while the government talks about resilience, the public sees something else entirely. They see policies being rolled out without transparency, military recruitment expanding through migrant pathways, protests erupting, confusion spreading, and all of it happening under the banner of shared sacrifice. That phrase, shared sacrifice, is becoming harder and harder to believe in, because what many people are seeing doesn't look shared at all. It looks like decisions being made without consent. It looks like leadership acting first, explaining later, or not at all. And that gap between what's said and what's seen, that's where trust goes to die. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. This is exactly what hybrid warfare is designed to exploit. It doesn't need to create chaos. It just needs to take the chaos that's already there and amplify it. When people feel abandoned, ignored, or confused, they don't rally. They withdraw. They stop engaging. And once the public steps back from its institutions, those institutions start to weaken from the inside. And that is the real target. Not military bases, but societal cohesion. Not infrastructure, but legitimacy. If trust collapses, resilience goes with it. And suddenly, Britain, or any nation, for that matter, becomes vulnerable not because it was invaded, but because it stopped believing in itself. That's not theoretical. That's the exact strategy being observed. Break the system by breaking the belief in the system. So when defense officials start emphasizing civilian roles in national security, when they talk about a new, holistic approach that includes families, veterans, and ordinary citizens, they are not being metaphorical. They are acknowledging that in this kind of war, the real defense line isn't just the military. It's the people. But that only works if the people trust the mission. Right now, that trust is fractured. The recruitment of migrants into the military during a time of national tension has stirred backlash. Not because people are anti-migrant, but because they feel blindsided. They see a country demanding unity while making unilateral decisions that don't feel inclusive. And when government actions don't match public expectations, protests don't just happen, they escalate. Hybrid warfare doesn't cause that tension. It just waits for it, and then pushes it to the surface. This form of warfare doesn't aim to destroy society. It aims to divide it, to erode confidence slowly, so that when the real emergency comes, everyone's already too disillusioned to respond collectively. And in Britain right now, the warning signs are everywhere. Every delay in government communication, every broken promise, every high-level breach of data, every policy rolled out without explanation, it all adds up to a narrative that no firewall can defend against. Even when the technology works, if people stop believing in leadership, the response is already compromised. Defense isn't just about cyber capabilities anymore. It's about credibility. And that's the part slipping through the cracks. You can invest in state-of-the-art systems, hire the best intelligence analysts, and conduct non-stop simulations. But if the people don't feel like they are part of the equation, none of it matters. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. Because in a hybrid war, your strongest asset is a society that trusts itself. That's what Britain risks losing. And this is what makes a situation so dangerous. Leadership knows all of this. They've acknowledged that resilience depends on social cohesion. They've even admitted that future threats will be psychological as much as physical. But knowing that isn't enough. What matters now is action, because the metrics are changing. Traditional measures of national strength, troop numbers, defense budgets, infrastructure redundancy, don't hold up when the threat is internal breakdown. Now, governments have to track something much harder to quantify: societal consent. Are people willing to act in a crisis? Do they trust what they are being told? Will they cooperate under pressure? These are the questions that define success in a hybrid war. And if the answer to any of them is no, then the system's not ready, no matter how many emergency protocols are in place. What's needed isn't more control. It's more clarity. Because the current trajectory, increased threats, decreased trust, leads to a very clear outcome. Internal fractures that hostile actors don't even need to create. They just need to exploit them. And they're already doing it. Hybrid tactics have one thing in common. They aim to outlast. They don't need to win fast. They just need to keep society on edge, overwhelmed, and questioning itself. Over time, that wears people down, until they start asking not how can we respond, but what's the point? That shift in thinking is the endgame. Once a population checks out, once they see national security as someone else's problem, someone else's failure, resilience collapses. Not in a dramatic, visible way, but quietly, fatally. So this isn't just about being prepared. It's about whether people even believe that preparation matters, whether they believe their institutions are capable, whether they think their leaders are telling the truth, whether they trust their neighbors to stay calm in a blackout, or their hospitals to function when the lights go out. That kind of belief doesn't come from slogans. It comes from transparency, accountability, and earned legitimacy. And that's what's missing. Every breach, every protest, every policy that lands with more confusion than clarity. These aren't just bad headlines. They are hits to the very core of public trust. And if Britain can't repair that damage, it won't matter how strong its systems are. Because no system works without people behind it who believe it's worth protecting. So where does this leave us? With a choice. Either the country recognizes that its greatest vulnerability isn't an external enemy, but internal disillusionment, and starts rebuilding legitimacy from the ground up. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. Or it keeps going down the path where perception lags behind reality, and the public is expected to stay resilient while being kept in the dark. Because trust doesn't recover on its own. Once it's lost, it takes time, and real change, to rebuild. And time is the one thing hybrid warfare is counting on us to waste. So the real question now isn't about bombs or borders. It's about belief. Who do people still believe in? Who do they stand with when everything feels unstable? Because in the end, that's what will decide whether Britain weathers this storm or falls victim to a war most people never even saw coming. Drop your thought below. Is trust already broken beyond repair? Or is there still time to rebuild what's been lost? If you're following this story, hit the like button, share this with someone who needs to see through the noise, and make sure you're subscribed. We'll keep watching what others miss and saying what needs to be said. So here we are, at the edge of something most countries only talk about in think tanks and defense briefings. But in Britain, it's unfolding right now, in real time, on home soil, without a single missile fired. And the most devastating part? A large part of the public doesn't even realize it's already happening. Let's be blunt. This isn't about hypotheticals anymore. It's about the fact that trust, one of the most essential forms of national infrastructure, is buckling under pressure. And if that collapses, no amount of military readiness or cybersecurity can hold the line. You can reinforce your firewalls, simulate power outages, boost your recruitment numbers. But if the average person thinks the government is playing games, dodging questions, or prioritizing agendas over honesty, you've already lost a fight for unity. And unity is what hybrid warfare targets first. So when Britain's military leadership talks about civilian readiness, about how everyday people, families, veterans, workers, are now part of the defense framework, it's not symbolic. It's a desperate acknowledgement of reality. In this kind of war, the battlefield isn't out there. It's here. And civilians aren't spectators. They're the defense line. But if those civilians feel disrespected, dismissed, or disillusioned, they're not going to stand in that line. They are going to walk away from it. And that's the terrifying part. Britain is experiencing what happens when you ask people to sacrifice for a system they don't believe is sacrificing with them. Take the migrant recruitment policy. In isolation, it's a strategy. Address manpower shortages. Expand military capacity. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. But in context, it hits a nerve. Not because of who's being recruited, but because of how it's being introduced. To a public already anxious, watching their government expand defense capabilities while failing to explain why, how, or what it means for them, that doesn't feel like leadership. That feels like a decision made behind closed doors and dropped on their doorstep without a conversation. And when that happens, trust doesn't just decline. It disappears. The result? Protests, anger, a sharp rise in resistance, not against offense, but against a disconnect. Hybrid warfare feeds on this exact tension. It's not about brute force. It's about psychological fatigue. Keep the public uncertain. Keep them cynical. Keep them asking, what's really going on? Because once that question becomes a norm, once people feel like they're not just uninformed but excluded, they stop engaging entirely. And that disengagement is the most dangerous outcome possible. Because in a crisis, you don't want a population that's skeptical of the response plan. You want one that trusts the system enough to follow it. But Britain's current trajectory? It's heading the other way. Right now, we're watching an erosion of legitimacy unfold. Not from one dramatic failure, but from a pattern of missteps, slow disclosures, policy confusion, and tone-deaf messaging. One breach after another, one broken line of communication at a time, and with every gap, public confidence takes another hit. This isn't some abstract policy problem. It's real-world danger. Because when the next cyber attack hits, and based on all current trends, the response won't just depend on the military or government systems. It will depend on the people. Their trust, their cooperation, their willingness to believe the system is worth defending. If that belief is gone, the damage won't come from the cyber attack itself. It will come from the chaos that follows. Hospitals, power stations, transport systems. These are not just pieces of critical infrastructure. They are public lifelines. And right now, intelligence is warning that these systems are under increasing threat. Not just random hacking. Coordinated, state-backed pressure, designed not to destroy outright, but to weaken slowly and systematically. We're talking about systemic degradation, not instant destruction. A power outage that lasts 4 hours today, 12 tomorrow. A hospital that can't access patient records. A logistics system that delays vital supplies. It's not dramatic. It's strategic. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. And when it keeps happening, confidence in institutions doesn't just suffer, it collapses. That's the point of hybrid warfare. Create a society so wrapped in doubt, so weary from stress, that it breaks under its own uncertainty. So yes, the military is preparing. Defense officials are issuing statements. Simulations are running nonstop, and the rhetoric is shifting toward national resilience. But what no one wants to admit is that resilience doesn't exist without trust. You can't demand unity while your policies divide. You can't lecture the public on resilience while keeping them out of the conversation. And you definitely can't build a defense strategy on the backs of a disengaged population. This is a real crisis. The slow, almost invisible unraveling of social cohesion. And once that's gone, it's a long, painful road back. We've seen this before. Societies that thought their strength was in their technology, their military, their protocols, only to find out too late that their real vulnerability was a space between government and people. Britain is standing in that space now. So what's the solution? It's not more speeches. It's not dramatic warnings or vague promises of preparedness. It's leadership that meets the public with honesty, clarity, and transparency that doesn't come days after the fact, but in real time. People don't expect perfection. They expect to be treated like stakeholders, not liabilities, because once you level with them, they respond, they engage, they prepare. But right now, people feel like spectators in a game where the rules are being rewritten without their input. And that disconnect, that policy perception gap, is exactly where hybrid threats aim their sharpest tools. Every government that fails to communicate clearly gives adversaries more room to manipulate the narrative. Every broken promise becomes a new crack to pry open. And every second spent managing fallout instead of preventing it is time lost in a battle where speed is everything. Let's be clear, this isn't just a UK issue. It's a lesson for every democratic society. Because hybrid warfare doesn't respect borders. It targets systems of trust. And democracies, by definition, run on trust. You can't govern without it. You can't protect without it. You can't recover without it. Britain's challenge now isn't to prepare for war in the traditional sense. It's to stabilize a society that's already being shaken from within, to rebuild the legitimacy that's been worn down by years of political chaos, misinformation, and secrecy. Because if that trust isn't restored, the next crisis won't be cyber or military. It will be existential. So what will it take? More than readiness. More than drills, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. More than slogans, it will take a full pivot toward openness, toward explaining not just what's happening, but why? It means treating the public as part of the mission, not a risk to be managed. Because in the end, no firewall will save you if no one believes what you're defending is worth saving. That's the uncomfortable truth. And it's the one no leader can afford to ignore anymore. So the next time a national alert goes out, when systems go down, or the news report another breach, ask yourself, are people going to panic? Or are they going to respond? The answer depends on one thing. Do they still trust the system telling them what to do? And that is a battlefield where Britain's future is being decided, not in the shadows, but in plain sight. At this point, it's not just a policy crisis. It's a national identity crisis. Because Britain isn't just being challenged by external threats. It's being asked a far deeper question. Who are you when the systems you trust start to break down? When leadership fumbles a message, when people are told to prepare, to be resilient, to brace for sacrifice, but aren't told what that sacrifice looks like or who's actually making it. You can't run a united defense strategy if the public feels like the burden isn't shared. And right now, that's exactly the problem. The phrase shared sacrifice keeps getting repeated. But from the outside looking in, what does that even mean? When government agencies get breached, when critical data disappears into the hands of hostile actors, when the public finds out after the damage has been done, it doesn't feel shared. It feels forced, imposed, unfair, and that's where trust doesn't just erode. It fractures. That's what makes the situation so urgent. Not just because cyber attacks are escalating, or because infrastructure is vulnerable, but because public perception is crumbling right alongside it. And perception, in hybrid warfare, is a battlefield. If people don't believe the message, if they don't trust the messenger, then it doesn't matter how strong your defenses are. It doesn't matter how many contingency plans you've got locked away. You lose the minute the public start to believe it's already over. Or worse, that it was never their fight to begin with. The chaos we're seeing now, it's not spontaneous. It's not random. It's the logical outcome of too many contradictions stacking up. A government that talks about resilience but doesn't explain the plan. A defense system that leaks private data and then tells the public to stay calm. A recruitment strategy that seems to prioritize filling ranks over maintaining cohesion, with little to no public dialogue about why this change is being made now and how it fits into the larger picture. That vacuum, where there should be honesty, accountability, and real public engagement, is where the damage is being done. And it's not just about policy. It's psychological. People are being told to prepare for blackouts, cyber attacks, and unthinkable disruptions to daily life, while being left to connect the dots on their own. That's not strategy. That's stress. This is how hybrid warfare works. You don't have to disable the grid. Just convince the public it could go out at any moment. You don't need to break the NHS. Just make people question if it will still be there when they need it. You don't need to fake news when trust in real news is already so low nobody believes anything anymore. It's slow-motion destabilization. And while that plays out, leadership is walking a tightrope, trying to balance the need to respond without tipping into panic. But the silence, the vagueness, the policy opacity, that's not balance. That's denial. Because here's what's clear. This is not just a technological war. It's a societal one. The real damage won't come from a single system going down. It'll come from the chain reaction, the breakdown of coordination, the collapse of belief, the refusal to act when it's most needed, because no one's sure who to believe, or if anyone's in charge. That's the nightmare scenario. And based on the warnings already issued by military and intelligence officials, it's not a fantasy. It's already underway. Let's look at the numbers again. A 47% spike in cyber threats tied to hostile states. That's not noise. That's a pattern. And that pattern isn't hitting military sites. It's aimed directly at civilian infrastructure. Why? Because civilians are the soft target, the unprotected network, the underprepared front line. And more importantly, they are the emotional foundation of national stability. When civilians lose faith, everything else follows. This is the new warfare playbook. You don't weaken a country by attacking its weapons. You attack its confidence. You take a system that looks solid on the surface and start poking holes in the social glue underneath. You highlight inequality. You amplify public frustration. You create just enough confusion to make every crisis feel like proof that the government can't handle the truth, or worse, isn't telling it. And again, this isn't all being orchestrated from the outside. The internal contradictions are doing just as much damage. A society that's being told to brace for war, while also feeling like they've been left out of every important decision. That's not resilience. That's a fracture waiting to happen. And every policy that lands without explanation, every data breach, every recruitment controversy, every delay in transparency, drives the wedge deeper. You cannot fight a hybrid war with half a country checked out of the fight. But that's what's happening. And the longer this continues, the harder it will be to pull people back in. Because once belief collapses, rebuilding it takes longer than any political cycle. It's not just about getting through the next emergency alert. It's about being able to survive the long, grinding where perpetual crisis. That's what makes hybrid warfare so effective. It doesn't attack your systems. It attacks your stamina. It drags you into a state of constant tension and then waits to see who holds on and who gives up. Right now, Britain is being asked to hold on. But to what? To promises that feel unfulfilled? To policies that don't feel explained? To a leadership structure that keeps asking for patience without giving clear direction? That's not how you build resilience. That's how you burn it out. So where does this leave us? With a nation teetering between preparation and panic, a public that knows something is wrong, but isn't sure what to believe anymore, and an adversary that doesn't need to cross borders because the battlefield is already inside the country, in servers, in headlines, in conversations, in trust. That's what's at stake now. And the next phase of this crisis won't be defined by what the government does in secret. It'll be decided by what the public is willing to believe in public. Will people still follow guidance? Will they work together in a real emergency? Will they act like a nation or retreat into factions? Those answers are going to define Britain's future. Not missiles, not invasions, belief. So here's what needs to happen, and fast. Government officials need to stop underestimating the perception gap. This is not just about defense readiness. It's about public legitimacy. That means speak plainly, not politically. Share plans before they fail. Treat the public like a stakeholder, not a security risk. Because if leadership can't meet people where they are, anxious, uncertain, and looking for something to hold on to, they will turn away. And when they turn away, that's when the real collapse begins. Because in a hybrid war, the system doesn't break down when it's attacked. It breaks down when no one shows up to defend it. So let's bring it back to the core issue, not the war out there, but the war in here, inside the institutions, inside public discourse, inside the very idea of what it means to be a functioning democracy under threat. Because Britain's biggest vulnerability right now isn't a lack of tanks or software or trained personnel. It's a lack of coherence, a lack of connection between power and people. And in a hybrid war, that is absolutely fatal. This form of warfare doesn't require explosions. It just needs a slow leak of trust. It needs public confidence to chip away, quietly, consistently, until there's nothing left to defend but the appearance of stability. That's the game being played right now. The hostile actors don't need to break the UK. They just need to nudge it toward breaking itself. So when people see leaders preaching sacrifice while appearing detached from its consequences, they notice. When systems fail and the public gets vague apologies and promises of investigations, they remember. And when they are told to stay alert but not given the information to act on, they disengage. And disengagement is the objective. Because once the average person tunes out, the nation becomes hollowed from within. You can't run a modern democracy, let alone defend it, if no one's listening, participating, or believing. And that's exactly where things are heading unless something shifts. The government's current playbook seems to rely heavily on damage control rather than long-term legitimacy building. And in this context, that's like bringing a bucket to a flood. You can't control the narrative when the narrative is silence. You can't call for national unity and withhold context. You can't ask people to trust your strategy when your track record reads like a list of unexplained misfires. Because every time leadership fumbles a message, or worse, refuses to deliver one, the public writes its own version. And right now, that version is full of skepticism, frustration, and resignation. The fact that people are more willing to believe conspiracies and official statements, that's not a fringe problem. That's a structural alarm bell. This is what hybrid warfare feeds on, the credibility gap. And once that gap grows wide enough, even the truth can't cross it. So when another breach hits, or another protest erupts over policy contradictions, or another high-ranking official delivers a statement full of vague reassurances, the public doesn't hear strength. They hear spin. And when spin replaces strategy, even basic defense planning becomes politically toxic. Even smart moves are met with doubt. Because in a trust vacuum, nothing sounds honest. That's how the collapse begins. Not through sabotage, but through disbelief. And that disbelief is dangerously close to becoming the default setting for a growing number of citizens. Let's not pretend this is abstract. It's happening right now, in the way people talk about their institutions, in the tone of public discourse, in the fatigue showing up in every headline, every interview, every press conference. And the more that fatigue spreads, the more fragile national cohesion becomes. And here's the thing, cohesion is not optional anymore. It's the new currency of survival in the age of hybrid warfare. Cyber threats are no longer theory. They are logged, tracked, escalating, and explicitly tied to hostile nations. The number of coordinated attempts to probe, stress, and disrupt core UK infrastructure is up almost 50%. That's not background noise. That's a sustained offensive. But even worse than the attacks themselves is a realization that when a major disruption hits, the public might not believe the response, might not follow the instructions, might not trust that anyone in charge actually has control. And if that's the case, you've already lost. Because in modern conflict, control isn't about firepower, it's about narrative, about perception, about legitimacy. Without that, the government can have the best cybersecurity experts in the world, and it won't matter, because people won't comply, won't engage, won't respond the way the system needs them to in a coordinated emergency. And if people don't trust the system, they won't behave as part of it. They'll turn inward. They'll self-isolate. They'll look for scapegoats, not solutions. They'll fragment. And that's a prize hostile actors are playing for, a Britain that looks whole on paper, but inside is fractured, suspicious, and unable to function as a united front. So, let's talk solutions, not in the abstract, but in the urgency that this moment demands. First, stop under-communicating. People are tired of being surprised. They are tired of vague policies with no clear consequences or reasoning. If military recruitment is shifting, say why. If cyber threats are increasing, say how. Not after the fact. Not once panic sets in. But now, in advance, before confusion becomes its own crisis. Second, bridge the perception gap. Don't just tell people to be resilient. Show them how to be resilient. Provide tools, not platitudes. Give communities resources, not slogans. Tell them what they are up against, clearly, directly, and with respect for their ability to understand complexity. Third, own the contradictions. If policies seem misaligned or tone-deaf, explain them. If optics are bad, address them head-on. Pretending they don't exist only worsens a credibility deficit. People are watching. They are connecting dots. And when the silence grows louder than the explanation, the worst narrative always wins. Fourth, treat trust as infrastructure, because it is. Just like water, power, and transport. Without it, nothing flows. No system works. No response functions. And once it's lost, recovery isn't measured in days, it's measured in generations. That's a long game Britain is playing right now. And the outcome depends less on cyber capabilities and on whether the public still believes the system is on their side. Because if they don't, every alert becomes suspect. Every update becomes spin. Every directive becomes optional. And that kind of disengagement isn't reversible with policy memos. So ask yourself, when the next threat hits, when the next wave of instability rolls in, who will people stand with? Will they stand with each other? With the institutions? With the leaders they are supposed to trust? Or will they turn away, convinced that their role was never more than symbolic? That's the decision point. It's not coming. It's here. And the scariest part is, you might not even notice when the switch flips. Because hybrid warfare doesn't break things loudly. It breaks them silently, slowly, subtly, until one day, the country looks around and realizes it's still standing, but no one's standing together. That's a final warning. Let us know what you think. Has the public's trust already been spent? Are we in denial about how far the erosion has gone? Or is there still time, barely, to pull this back from the brink? Leave a comment below. Let your voice be part of the record. And if this resonated with you, if you want more breakdowns that cut through the noise, hit like, share this, and subscribe. Because we're not waiting for the spin to stop. We're watching it in real time and calling it exactly for what it is. Stay alert, stay questioning, and above all, stay in the fight.